The story of Meghan Markle's treatment by the British royal family and media is far more complex than it appears on the surface. Many people assume it's solely about race, and while race undeniably plays a significant role, there's much more at play. This is also about power, control, and a rigid expectation of conformity, particularly for women within the monarchy. Welcome, this is Majesty's Sussex Report. I'm Antonio. Thank you for spending some of your valuable time here with us. This is part 1 of Breaking the Silence. Throughout its history, the British royal family has thrived on a delicate balance of tradition, public image, and media manipulation. The unwritten rules governing the firm dictate not just the behavior of the royals, but also their subservience to the media. The two institutions have long been intertwined, mutually benefiting from each other's influence. But there's a cost, and it's paid most dearly by the women born into or married into the institution. Every woman, from Princess Diana to Sarah Ferguson and now Meghan Markle, has been subject to relentless scrutiny, pressure to conform, and public shaming. The media is the tool the monarchy uses to maintain control. It reinforces the message that women must know their place. Whether it's adhering to social rank or fulfilling their role as subordinates. Behind the facade of crowds, royal celebrations, and a global figurehead lies an institution deeply dependent on wealth, status, and a press willing to uphold their power.
Yes. Greetings, my esteemed viewers. I trust you're mildly entertained by today's episode of Majesty Sussex Report. I mean, it's not quite tea with the Queen, not that Queen, the other Queen. Thank you. But one does what one can, doesn't one? Now, before you get too comfortable, might I remind you to bestow a like upon this humble video. Oh, and subscribing, well, it's terribly fashionable, you know. All the royals are doing it, or so I've heard in the servant halls. And as for that notification bell, well, ring it if you must. It ensures you don't miss our thrilling gossip about the Duke and Duchess of somewhere or another. I do love a good scandal. I mean, thoughtful discussion. So go on, engage with the channel, dear. It keeps the gossip flowing, and frankly, who doesn't love a bit of drama? And with that, I bid you farewell, for now. Carry on, and do be sure to come back, won't you? Oh dear, sometimes I get so excited I forget things. If you would like to support this channel financially, you can do so by sending a super thanks of super sticker. Thank you.
But this story too is about wealth. Wealth that has been built through centuries of exploitation, enslavement, and conquest. The very foundations of the British Empire were laid on the suffering of people of color, and the royal family was deeply intertwined with these practices. For centuries, the monarchy's riches have been propped up by the suffering of others, while women in the firm were used as pawns in a larger power game. In 2021, a report revealed that the Queen successfully lobbied Parliament to conceal her true wealth from public scrutiny. The true value of the monarchy is elusive. Forbes magazine estimated that the royal family holdings are worth more than $28 billion, and that was a few years ago. Properties like Buckingham Palace, crown jewels, and vast swaths of UK land form just the tip of the iceberg. Yet, behind the crown, an intricate financial structure protects their interest. For instance, King Charles inherited from the Queen, from her private estate, worth approximately $737 million, without paying the 40% inheritance tax that ordinary Britons face. Charles, too, has passed along close to £1 billion worth of property to Prince William, ensuring that the wealth remains within the family. So while ordinary citizens of Britain struggle with rising costs of living, debating whether to heat their homes or buy food, the Windsors remain cushioned by centuries of unearned privilege. Meghan's presence was a disruption. A woman of color, fiercely independent, unwilling to stay silent or conform. Her entry into the royal family was an affront to their centuries-old structure, and it's no wonder the institution and the media joined forces to drive her out. The media's role in this cannot be understated. The British press, deeply intertwined with the monarchy, has long been a tool to keep members of the firm in line. For centuries, the royals and the media have enjoyed a symbiotic relationship. The royals offer access, and the media, in turn, protects their image until they don't. When someone steps out of line, as Meghan did, the press swiftly turns with brutal consequences. This isn't new. Look back through the history of the monarchy and you'll see a pattern. The women in particular, from Princess Margaret to Diana, from Sarah Ferguson to Meghan, are expected to conform, And when they don't, they're cast aside. Their personal lives turn into tabloid fodder. But where did all this wealth and power truly originate? One major source was the British Empire, a sprawling dominion that at its height covered a quarter of the Earth's landmass. Central to this empire was the transatlantic slave trade, in which the royals played an undeniable role. Queen Elizabeth I herself sanctioned the first English voyage to traffic enslaved Africans.
In 1655, the Royal African Company was set up by royal charter under King Charles II. Its purpose was to control the West African slave trade and protect the British monopoly against the Dutch. The RAC went on to transport more enslaved Africans to the Americas than any other single institution ever, lining the pockets of the Stuart monarchs. Many of those trafficked were branded with the initials DY, as in the Duke of York, who led the company and later became King James II. Britain's shameful history of slavery is inextricable from the royals who were so eager to profit from it, and that barbaric legacy extends today. Historic royal residences like Kensington Palace and Hampton Court Palace that date back to the 17th century were, to some extent, funded by slavery. So while it's hard to tell just how much of the Windsor's wealth derives from slavery today, it quite literally helped to build the roofs over their heads. And these days, it's the British taxpayers who are footing the maintenance bill. In 2014, they paid $7.6 million to refurbish a 20-room apartment for Will and Kate in Kensington Palace.
However, the renovations and repairs that were scheduled for Frogmore Cottage at a cost of $3 million provided by the sovereign grant, the same that paid for William and Kate's $7.5 million renovation, was paid back by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, after the media whipped up some kind of frenzy about the renovation and saying that the couple did not deserve to have Frogmore Cottage repair at taxpayer cost. So the couple paid the $3 million back. Soon thereafter, King Charles III asked the couple to vacate Frogmore Cottage and took it back. He took back the gift that his mother, Prince Harry's grandmother, gave to him and Meghan. His father took it back after they had paid the $3 million for the renovation. I can't quite put my hands on why it would be okay to pay $7.5 million for Kate and William's renovation, but it wasn't okay to pay the $3 million for Harry and Meghan's. I've been trying really hard to figure out what's the difference. I mean, one is an heir and one is a spare, so there's a difference there. But I wonder what's the other difference, if there's another difference, because I'm not sure. I'll leave you folks to figure that out. In the 19th century, after Britain finally abolished slavery, it wasn't the enslaved who received reparations, but the slave owners. The Slavery Abolition Act of 1833 came with a £20 million payout to slave owners. That's about £17 billion in today's money. A figure so large it took 182 years for Britain taxpayers to fully pay it off. To this day, former colonies, particularly in the Caribbean and Africa, are calling for reparations, with demands reaching into the trillions. And yet, amidst all of this historical reckoning, Prince William and Kate's Caribbean tour, they were met with protest, calls for apologies, for acknowledgement, for reparation. I mean, they should have expected this. But instead of any of that the people were asking for, what they got, what they were met with was a polite sorrow, but no concrete action.
Good evening, everyone. Your Excellencies, Prime Minister, Mr. and Mrs. Bridges, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Tenekato katoa. Your Excellency, thank you for your warm welcome to Government House this evening, as well as for hosting me and Harry during our special time in New Zealand. We are proud to be able to join you tonight in celebrating the 125th anniversary of women's suffrage in your country. The achievements of the women of New Zealand who campaigned for their right to vote and were the first in the world to achieve it are universally admired. In looking forward to this very special occasion, I reflected on the importance of this achievement, but also the larger impact of what this symbolizes. It is a great privilege to be with all of you today. As a university graduate, I know the personal feeling of pride and excitement that comes with attending university. From the moment you receive your acceptance letter, to the exams you spend countless late nights studying for, the lifelong friendships you make with your fellow alumni, to the moment that you receive your diploma. The journey of higher education is an incredible, impactful, and pivotal one. I am also fully aware of the challenges of being able to afford this level of schooling for many people around the world, myself included. It was through scholarships, financial aid programs, and work study, where my earnings from a job on campus went directly towards my tuition, that I was able to attend university. And without question, it was worth every effort.
The historic context of Britain's involvement in slavery and its imperial dominance over large swaths of the world's black and brown populations cast a stark light on Meghan Markle's treatment by the firm and the British media. For centuries, the British Empire was built on the exploitation, enslavement, and colonization of non-white peoples. With the monarchy at the center of this global system of power. The royal family, wealth, and status were intrinsically tied to the subjugation of millions, reinforcing a worldview where white British superiority was the foundation of their global dominance. The idea that a mixed-race Black woman could rise to a prominent position within the royal family, an institution so deeply rooted in these colonial histories, poses a direct challenge to centuries-old notions of superiority and control. Meghan Markle's presence, and particularly her success, threatened to unravel a carefully curated narrative that placed the royal family as the pinnacle of Britishness and whiteness, upheld by centuries of empire. Historically, the British Empire controlled around a quarter of the world's landmass, dominating the lives of Black and brown people across Africa, the Caribbean, India, and beyond. It did so under the premise of racial superiority, with the monarchy symbolizing this power and enforcing it through colonial structures and violence. The royals, while often playing ceremonial roles, directly benefited from these systems of exploitation, and their wealth today is in part a legacy of this imperial history. When Meghan entered the royal family, she brought with her not only her biracial identity, but also a sense of modernity and activism that stood in contrast to the outdated and strained image of the monarchy. As an American woman of mixed race who had already established her own platform and career, Meghan's success and public appeal directly challenged the institution's narrative that only those born into a trained within Britain could truly understand the weight of the crown. Meghan's effectiveness, particularly in her humanitarian work, activism, and ability to connect with diverse global audiences, highlighted the gap between the royal family's image of benevolence and the reality of their entrenched privilege. Her impact, whether through her work on mental health, women's rights, or racial equality, showcased a stark contrast to the often performative activism of the royal family, which is deeply embedded in traditional roles. Meghan wasn't just participating in charity. She was advocating for real change, something that disrupted the firm, carefully managed approach to public service, which has often been more about appearances than results. Furthermore, as a woman of color, Meghan's success in these spaces was a direct affront to an institution built on the supremacy of whiteness. The optics of a biracial American woman excelling in areas where the royal family has struggled for relevance, especially as someone who wasn't born into royalty, unsettled the firm. It exposes the institution's stagnation and unwillingness to evolve, which is a deeper reflection of the larger colonial mindset that has long permeated British society, one that still struggles to fully reckon with its imperial past. The fact that Meghan, an outsider in every sense, a woman of mixed race, an American, and someone without aristocratic British roots, could perform royal duties with such poise and effectiveness better than some of those born and raised into the system was intolerable to a monarchy that has long been the symbol of white British superiority. It exposes the fragility of an institution that, for centuries, has relied on the narrative that British aristocracy, steeped in tradition and legacy, is inherently superior to all others. Thus, the hostility towards Meghan can be viewed as more than just a reaction to her race or her American roots. It reflects a deeper fear within the firm that the very foundations of their power, built on the subjugation and exploitation of Black and brown people across the globe, could be undermined by the success of a woman who represents the very people the empire once oppressed. Her ability to outshine those who have spent their entire lives within the royal system threatens the entire structure of the monarchy, exposing its outdated traditions and its unwillingness to evolve in a diverse, globalized world. In essence, Meghan's treatment by the firm is not just about her refusal to conform to royal expectations, but about what she represents: a dismantling of the myth of white British superiority that the monarchy has relied on for centuries. Her success illuminated the monarchy's failures and forced a reckoning with its imperial past, a past that is inseparable from the very identity of the firm. This is why the system was never going to allow Meghan Markle to succeed, because her presence and effectiveness challenged the deeply entrenched power structures that a monarchy has long relied upon. Think about it.
In Britain, we present the colonial project as being about teaching the natives table manners and double-entry bookkeeping. In India, the British manufactured a famine in the 1870s, out of nothing. There were food surpluses, massive amounts of food. But the governor, Lord Lytton, insisted that this food be exported wholesale to Britain. The ensuing starvation killed at least 12 million people, possibly as much as 29 million people. All relief works were banned, except for hard labour in labour camps, where the inmates received the same ration as the inmates of Buchenwald, and where there was a 94% death rate per year. This was all done in the name of liberal free market capitalism. Of course, the British did something similar. In Kenya, soon after the Second World War, there was an uprising by the Kikuyu people who wanted their land back. The Kikuyu into concentration camps and fortified villages, almost the entire population of over 1 million people. People were systematically tortured. They invented a new kind of pliers whose purpose was first to crush men's testicles and then to cut them off. They raped women with bayonets. They raped men. Similarly, a favourite technique was to ram sand up the rectum with a stick. Sometimes they were rolled up in barbed wire and kicked around the compound until they bled to death. Some of the British soldiers boasted this. This is within living memory. The colonial secretary lied about it. The papers documenting it were burnt. The impact of the powerful nations has been so phenomenally murderous and destructive that it has been completely airbrushed from our national consciousness. In order to justify the land-grabbing colonial projects, you had to create an ideology. We, the Europeans or the Americans, have come to rescue the rest of the world from its depravity and backwardness. But in order to do that, to be able to demonstrate that the rest of the world is depraved and backward, from this arose the racism that is still with us today. It was a necessary component of the project. Some people might claim, well, okay, we broke a few eggs to make this omelette. It's as if all those human beings were eggs. But look at the omelette. Isn't it fantastic? Look, we made this fantastic omelette. Forget about all that unpleasant stuff and let's just celebrate where we are. Where we are is a continuation of the project. We commodified people's land and people's labour and turned it into our property. We're also destroying the rest of the living world alongside it. We don't have to be like this. We are the same human beings as anybody else. We're all part of the same big human family. We just have to recognise that, accept that. And of course, within Western countries, there are plenty of brilliant people resisting colonisation, both internal colonisation within our own countries and external colonisation of other people's countries. These are the voices which must come to the fore, those who emphasise altruism and kind generosity and empathy for others, those who recognise that skin colour and any other difference of language, of religion, of background is completely
represented at the time 40% of the Treasury's annual spending budget. The sum was so large that it took British taxpayers 182 years to pay off.
Ashamed in some sense.
They represent a certain kind of history that is unpleasant for our people.